Hello. Today we are going to be talking about the spread of Islam. So our lesson question is, what impact did the spread of Islam have? So our lesson objectives are to explore the influence of Islam. And to do that, we're going to describe the spread of Islam. How did it spread from the Arabian Peninsula outward to its empires? Identify the reasons for the split in the Islamic faith. Just like we saw with the Great Schism in Christianity, there's also a split in the Islamic faith. And to identify scientific and cultural achievements made during Islam's golden age. So let's start off with some vocabulary terms. A caliph is a spiritual and political leader of the Muslim faith. To compile is to create or put something together. Devout people are very religious or sincere in their faith. Hereditary is when you get something based on being born into it. Shia is one of two major divisions within Islam who believe that Muhammad's closest relatives and friends should succeed him. Sunni, that's the other of the major divisions in Islam, and they recognize the first four caliphs as Muhammad's rightful successors. An imam is a Muslim religious leader. A dynasty is a series of powerful leaders from the same family. Diffusion is the act of spreading out from a central point. And paternal means characteristics of fatherhood. So let's talk about Muhammad's successors. The leaders of the Muslim community after Muhammad's death were called caliphs, and caliphs were elected by the clans. The first caliph was a close friend of Muhammad, and he might have even been a relative, and that was Abu Bakr. He was succeeded by three caliphs who expanded the Muslim-held territory and built the first Muslim empire. And you can see here, if we look here, this is the extent of Islam during Muhammad's life, and then during the caliphates, it spread out even further, and then even further during the Umayyad dynasty, which was also another caliphate. And that even made it all the way into Spain. So how did Islam spread? Well, it spread through trade in goods, ideas, and also culture. You can see this Silk Road picture here. Missionaries, those were people traveling to convert other cultures to Islam. And also through military conquest, basically conquering other people and then converting them to Islam. So let's talk about Muslim conquest. Muslim armies were successful for many reasons. Muslim soldiers were devout, meaning that they were sincere in their religious faith. They were well disciplined and had superior military leadership. The Persian and Byzantine empires were already in a weakened state when Islam started to rise. Many people that the Muslims conquered chose to just accept the Islamic faith and the Muslim leadership. One of the reasons why people were able to accept Muslim leadership is because they practiced religious tolerance. Basically meant they tolerated or accepted other religions or people of other religions. And it was especially tolerant toward Jews and Christians. Now, Jews and Christians received special considerations because all three religions had the same God, and Muslims viewed Jews and Christians as people of the book. But they were required to pay a special tax, and they were not allowed to spread their beliefs. So there couldn't be any Christian missionaries in a Muslim society. But they were allowed to serve in positions of government under Muslim leadership. Let's talk about the Umayyad dynasty. The Umayyads were the first great Muslim dynasty after the rule of the caliphs. They created a hereditary or inherited system of succession. They moved the capital to Damascus, which is actually the capital of Syria today. And they were opposed by many of Muhammad's early followers. And that brings us to Islam's major divisions. There's two major camps in Islam. Sunni, and Shia. Now, the Sunni believe that the successor of Muhammad should be chosen from the Muslim community. Sunnis supported the Umayyads, and they believe that many people can interpret the Quran and lead prayers. The Shia, on the other hand, believe that the successor of Muhammad should come from his inner circle, or basically like his friends and family. They opposed the Umayyad rule, and they believe that imams chosen by Allah can interpret the Quran. And let's just look at the distribution of Sunni and Shia Muslims in the Middle East. Now, the darker orange it is the higher percentage of Sunni Muslims living in a region. So you can see here how Saudi Arabia, predominantly Sunni. But as you move over into Iraq and then further into Iran, you'll see that fewer and fewer people are Sunni, leading us to believe that more are Shia. The Umayyad Caliphate created a complex bureaucracy to oversee the empire. Bureaucracy is basically the way the government runs, so different people in positions of authority within the government. Now, only Muslims were considered citizens, and they held almost all positions of power. And it was corruption that would eventually lead to the collapse of the Umayyad Caliphate. And we can see here that under the Umayyad Caliphate, they spread all the way to Europe and all the way to India. Next up was the Abbasid dynasty, and they built an empire with absolute rule. They moved the capital from Damascus and created a new capital in Baghdad. That's modern-day Iraq. And if you see here in this picture, they had a circular city for their capital, and it was a walled city to protect from invaders. Now, they focused on eastward expansion toward India, and they accepted converts to Islam as equals in their society. They promoted trade, arts, and sciences, and that's what led to the golden age of Islam. Now, let's compare and contrast the role of women between the two empires. Unfortunately, the rights of women declined over time. If you look at the Umayyad rule, women played an important role in compiling the Quran, and they could own their own business and inherit property. Now, as time progressed into the Abbasid rule, women were confined to the home and actually began to veil themselves in public. And you can see up here, there's an example of the different Islamic veils that women would wear. So because women's role was diminished in society, Muslim societies became more paternalistic or more centered around the father. But that wasn't all bad during the Abbasid dynasty. They did push for more scholarship and education. The quest for knowledge was very important during Islam's golden age. Scholars translated Greek and Latin texts into Arabic, and that allowed them to make new discoveries as they studied classical works that were mostly lost in Europe. As a result, they created many libraries. This is actually illustration of a famous library in Baghdad. And this golden age lasted for 5 centuries. During the golden age, Muslim scholars made advancements in mathematics and science. Al-Khwarizmi invented algebra. Al-Razi, who was an important physician or a doctor, wrote medical books. And this right here is a diagram of the anatomy of the eye. Muslim art was influenced by Greek architecture, Christian mosaics, and other Islamic traditions. Calligraphy was the artistic way of writing things. You can see how it's very ornate. Arabesque art is art that's created with geometric shapes and patterns. And you can see here lattice work is also geometric shapes and patterns, but it's cut out so that sunlight can shine through. Now, mosques, which are Islamic places of worship, were considered the highest form of artistic expression. You can see here there's an elaborate mosque in Cairo. This is a mosque made during the Umayyad dynasty, and this is a minaret, which is a tower, and that was created during the Abbasid dynasty. Another way in which Arab scholars contributed to the world of mathematics was with Arabic numerals. Now, this is the number system most widely used across the world. It was invented by mathematicians in India before 500 CE, and it actually ended up replacing Roman numerals in Europe. And you can see here how it is very similar to the numbers that we use today, and how it's very different from the Roman numerals. Now, some of the effects of the Islamic Golden Age was that they influenced the European Renaissance. Islamic scholars were able to preserve classical works from Greece and Rome, and they had new ideas, inventions, and technologies that they were able to spread through trade. And these factors inspired Europeans to make great advancements in the 1400s. These pictures are of Arab merchants in Italy during the Renaissance. So let's look at the timeline. If we go back here, we have Justinian beginning rule in the Byzantine Empire. So during his rule, we had Muhammad rise to power, and then he died in Mecca, which ushered in the Umayyad dynasty. And then after that dynasty transitioned to the Abbasid dynasty. That dynasty ended with the Mongol invasion of Baghdad. And then for more historical context, Constantinople fell to the Ottoman Turks. And that was when the Byzantine Empire ended. So you can see that these Islamic empires were dominating the Middle East during the same time that the Byzantine Empire was dominating the Eastern Mediterranean.